It is exactly. All right. Okay. Um, I'm going to lead right into this, Anne. To put it in a context, you like so. I wrote this chapter on the on Adeline and Kalo, wasn't it? And then I
Yeah.
thought, no, 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 no. I mean, yes, that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I need to expand this. That was such an interesting process that you have on the go. So I thought, why don't we start here and let me get some of your insights. So, and I had the privilege of spending a few days with you at the in Taipei. What first led the Taipei European School to place stronger emphasis on creativity and innovation? What led you down that road? Was it like a realization, a tension, an aspiration? What started you on the road to the journey?
So actually, the school TS has five school values that
Yeah.
we kind of live by, like many schools do. And actually, one of those values is creativity.
Ah.
And in the British section, we started to develop a couple of years ago. We started to develop a framework around the values that we could use to. I don't really want to use the word assess because it's not really what I mean, but I'm not sure of another one. So sort of assess how our students are developing in those values.
Okay.
And so we created a framework that we actually use within our reporting structure as well,
Hmm.
which we don't give them a grade as such, but we note how they're developing in line with the values of the school, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
And we also, in our reports, actually, it's the students who write the comments rather than the teachers. So they write a reflection that goes
Oh.
on their report, and we center that around how they're growing in line with the school values. And
Hmm.
what that made us do in developing that framework, especially when it's student facing, but even when it's teacher facing, really, it made us think, well, what does this look like in practice?
Yeah.
Like if we're
Yeah.
measuring in some
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
our students' creative development, well, what does that actually look like? And so, because we needed some statements of what it
Yeah.
looked like, and so when we started looking at that and thinking about what does it look like, then the next logical question to that was, well, how are we actively developing this in our students?
Ah.
It's not that they become creative by osmosis just because
No.
of the because we say it's a value. So we really wanted to explore what are we doing in the classrooms and outside of the classrooms to actively support the development of creativity, and that's why we started. And so from there, as you know, we have a reading book that we read every year as a staff that is centered around the focus that we have for the year. And because we placed the focus on creativity, that led me to your book. We
Right.
started reading that, and that led me to you to say, "Hey, you've written this book.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're
This
reading
book.
it.
May as
Can
well
you
do
come
something with
in?"
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense. So let me ask you this. I think if you ask 100 people what they think of when they think of creativity, you're going to get quite a few answers.
Mhm.
What does it mean within the context of TES? I think you've just given me a bit of a glimpse into that, but what human capacities or dispositions are you hoping to cultivate in students?
So when we first started talking about what does it actually look like, what does
Yeah.
it mean to develop creativity, we started talking about the difference and connection between critical thinking and creative thinking.
Okay.
And I remember us talking a lot about schools tend to, we thought, prioritize critical thinking, which is
Yeah.
very important,
Yeah.
absolutely. But sometimes, and that's very actively developed within a school. Everybody knows how to develop
Yeah.
critical thinking in
Yeah.
students, but then creative thinking is often sort of left to a process of osmosis. And so we started by defining, well, what would creative thinking look like? So
Okay.
problem solving, transfer into novel situations. And then from there, that led us into, well, if students had these transferable skills, then their creativity would actually ultimately look like student agency. So students who can drive their own learning, students who, when we well, as you know, we're an MYP school. As we've transitioned into MYP
Yeah.
next year, We have for the first year the personal project. Thinking about the personal project is a hugely creative endeavor,
Yeah.
which requires the students to be able to drive that learning. So our question, I think, was, well, over the course of MYP, how do we get them there? How do we get it
Yeah.
so that they're taking on amazing projects that are very, very creative, and they have the skills to do that. So transferring their learning into a brand new and very different situation.
Hmm.
Looking at the world and considering, well, what problems are there and what's my role in solving them and how can I solve them in novel ways? And then being willing to take risks.
Hmm.
Uh, and in order to be innovative, I don't think you have any innovation if you don't have a risk-taking culture. So
Yeah.
we wanted to ensure that, and not being scared of failure, I think, is the other one,
Hmm.
because you don't take risks if you're not scared
Yeah.
of failure. So
Yeah.
so those are some of the dispositions, I'd say, that lead to creativity.
Brilliant. Actually, that tension between innovation and fear and risk in education is a really interesting one because education systems are generally highly risk averse, aren't they? And
Yeah.
it's something that I think many of us who have been trying to innovate with systems can find a bit frustrating at times. How do we deal with that?
I think, firstly, I think it's a culture. And
Yeah.
cultural shift is incredibly hard.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think it starts with, I think it's a community culture. So we can't expect students to take risks if they don't see their teachers taking risks. So, and what that can look like is, what's the learning in the classroom like? Is it
Yeah.
always predictable
Hmm.
and structured and, exactly the same way in every classroom that they go to? And I understand very well why some schools prioritize that, and they want consistency. And so, but with that consistency comes less teacher freedom and less teacher agency, and
Yeah.
also concern, often concern over things like, well, if someone comes into my lesson, this is not going to look like other lessons if I'm doing something different, and so therefore there's fear that develops around that. I think the other thing is, if you have a culture that is fixated on grades as the only measure of learning,
Yeah.
I think that also takes away risk-taking behaviors within the classroom and
Absolutely.
reduces innovation. So I think, from leadership, we have to give teachers permission to take risks. We have to give teachers permission to fail,
Yeah.
support them in experimentation, and if we can do that without the judgment of the judgment on their teaching and
Yeah.
as not being consistent to some kind of arbitrary design,
Right.
then we get risk-taking behaviors and innovation in the classroom amongst our teachers,
Hmm.
which leads to them creating the conditions for innovation in the students if we support them through professional development and,
Yeah.
the kinds of conversations that we've been having in the school. So I think that's where it starts, and of course then parents come into it. We did a session
Yeah.
with parents when we first, at the beginning of this year, actually, because every year we have a sort of like, it's called curriculum information evening, but we need to change the name because it's really not that. The
Yeah.
parents come in, and whatever our theme for the year is, then we show them, usually through workshop style,
Yeah.
why that's our theme. And so at the beginning of this year, that's what we did with parents too. We talked about what is the importance of creativity and how are we developing that within your kids at school. So really involving the whole community in
Yeah.
a culture of risk-taking innovation, um, avoiding that, well, not avoiding failure,
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding that
Yeah.
it's a learning
Yes.
process.
Yes.
Yeah, all of those things, and that once you create that culture, then you can, create the conditions for students to be more innovative and creative, I think.
Hmm. Why is this so important now? Why is this focus on doing things a little bit different in this incredibly interesting world that we're living in? Why does it make that so important?
Because I'm not sure that we could look at the world today and say that what we've been doing has worked.
Hmm. Yeah.
Or is working. Um, if we don't have a peaceful world, we don't have a world in which
No.
people feel safe. We don't have a world of equality. We have so many things that just are not really working. So if we believe, as I do, that education is the root of change, then why would we continue to do the exact same things in education that we've continued to do? It's like the definition of madness, isn't it?
It
If you keep
absolutely
doing
is,
the
and
same things.
how many times has that come to my mind? Absolutely. Yeah. And people
Yeah.
rationalize it. And I understand it's based on a fear of relinquishing control. It's, well, no, why we do it? Because we have to do it this way. And
Mm-hmm.
as baffling as you and I find it, that
Mm-hmm.
apparently is the way. So let's get back to the conference. I guess I'd first ask, what were you hoping the 3 day experience was provoke or uncover? Not just for students, but for the staff and the leadership as well. And were there particular questions that emerged from that conference?
Yeah, I think firstly I said before that leadership we have to give permission for
Yeah,
innovation and creativity, and sometimes you can say, well, this is the culture that we have, and
yeah,
we expect these things from you. But until you put time, money, and
yeah,
real effort into showing that that is the culture that you
yeah,
want, it's just words, really. So
yeah.
the conference was very much about that. It was about making sure that teachers could see that we weren't just reading a book and talking about creative things and then hoping that it would happen in the classroom. That
Mm,
we were really serious in terms of the amount of time that we wanted to spend, um, and an investment in our further professional growth within this area. So I mean,
mm,
that was the priority, really, was to demonstrate that. But then from there, of course, for both teachers and students, there were huge questions that emerged, and I think a lot of those questions were really, really positive. I would say that our teachers are very, very much on board with the idea that we absolutely need to develop creative skills within our students.
yeah,
I think what I just said about the world and about our context and culture here, I
yeah,
think our teachers are on board with that. But as you say in the final chapter of the book, the but chapter that we
yeah.
actually explored last week,
Okay.
um, there is still
Yeah,
that tension there amongst our teachers of, but there are these exams at the end, especially in
right.
our system, they're
Yeah,
standardized exams. So how do we reconcile that? And so we've really been digging into exploring that, and we're at the moment action planning. So what has come out of the conference is to develop, we're in the middle of developing our next strategic plan, which begins in August for the school. And a whole section of that will be dedicated to creativity and how we continue to develop that in our students. And what we did after the conference was we pulled together a group of volunteers who wanted to work on this with us. And we've been meeting every lunchtime on a Friday for several weeks now.
wow.
Um, and we started with all the poster work that was done during the conference.
Oh,
We
wow.
started with all of that. So we
Wow.
just stuck it all around the room, laid it on the
Yeah.
tables,
Oh,
and we
God, now I'm
pulled out.
envious. I want to be in on that. That is so exciting. Go on,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's been really cool. And so we started by pulling out themes.
Yeah.
And so what could we see across them all, and how could we create sort of overarching themes that we saw emerging? So we did that. And then in pairs, we took a theme each. And then we pulled out what was related to that theme within the poster, and we collected all of that. And
Wow.
then we shared what we had. And if we had it in more than one place, we took it out, so that we were just left with, okay, here are the things that emerged. And then from there, now the stage that we're in is we're action planning against that. So we've got these ideas. What we looked at things like feasibility first.
Yeah.
Are some things feasible in the short term? Are they feasible in the longer term? Are they not feasible at all? Is it an exploration that we need to do to
Mhm.
understand if it is feasible? So we worked all of that out.
Yeah.
And then we started to action plan.
Wow.
So what are the steps that we'll actually do? And so within our school plan, there'll be an action plan section that's emerged from around creativity, that's emerged from the work that we did during the 3 days we were
That
together.
is so cool.
Yeah.
The action planning committee that you have, is that students as well as staff?
So I did invite students. I tried to get
Yeah,
students
yeah,
to
yeah,
come
yeah.
in, but they didn't want to give up their Friday lunchtime, I think.
Ah,
So I didn't get any. But what I will do, the whole school plan actually, not just the creativity section. When we have a draft of that, I run student leadership here, so
yeah,
I will go to my
yeah.
student leadership groups. So that's the student council, senior and junior student councils, and they'll have input at that point.
Wow, that's very cool. So just back on the theme of students, it was really quite an unusual degree of involvement of students in conferences. Many times, and I always mention it when I go into places, and often people will take me up, but to greater and lesser degree. This was significant. What was the impact of that? What was the impact of that on the students themselves and on the staff?
Mm. I think the impact on the students is there are multiple impacts, I think. I mean,
Yeah,
firstly, I think we challenged them to really think deeply about what education
yeah,
could be, but I think we also gave them a voice in that. And for me, that's my area of passion is,
yeah,
well, how do we
yeah.
ensure that the students are at the heart of what we do, and I don't believe we should be doing education to them. So for me, it's really about like how can we listen to what it is that they tell us that they need, and how can we actually act on that. And so I think giving students the opportunity to tell us what they need was a huge thing and really important. Um, and so I think the impact on students for that is that we develop that culture of students being willing to challenge, because I think that's part of creative thinking. They need
Yeah,
to be willing to challenge what we're doing.
yeah,
I want students to come to me and say, I don't like this, and how
mm,
can we change it? I'll help
mm,
you. We'll work together on
yeah.
that. I don't want students to just comply in our school,
No,
because compliant thinking is for sure not creative thinking.
no,
Um, yeah, so I think providing that opportunity for students is really important. I think it has a greater ripple effects around how the student input that we want as a school. We're often asking for it, and so I think
yeah,
that's part of the culture that we want to try and develop here. Um, and then I think for the teachers, well, I think the students' voices are the most powerful voices, really.
yeah,
So if we don't hear the students' voices when we want to make decisions that affect them, then that's problematic for me, I think.
yeah,
And I really want to encourage, and have been for years now, encouraging teachers to seek feedback from students
yeah,
on the learning that they're experiencing. And I think we're getting better and better at that. So again, having them there was really a show of this is important.
yeah,
We're willing to
yeah.
bring them into these 3 days. We're willing to bring them into what is usually a teacher space of an inset day. Um, and we need to listen to what they're saying to
We
us.
surely do. And boy, did they offer some brilliant suggestions and ideas throughout the time. And what advice would you offer to other schools or organizations wanting to move in a similar direction?
I think I would say that it's strategic. I mean, I guess the process that I've just outlined
Yeah,
over the time that we've been talking is a process of strategic planning. For
yeah,
we want to improve creativity, so how are we going to do
yeah.
that, and how are we going to do that in a strategic way? What
Hmm.
are the different components that are needed to ensure that we can ultimately shift a culture? And so I would say that that's where it starts, really. You can't just say repeatedly,
No.
we want to be more creative in this
Mm.
school. You really have to plan for what are the needs that we have as a school in order to get to that endpoint that we want, if it's more creativity and innovation amongst our students and our staff. So yeah, I think I would say take the steps to analyze the situation as it is, and then to strategically plan an approach that is potentially multi-year,
Yeah,
that is going to result in the impact that you want in terms of student creativity.
absolutely. And I guess just two further questions. What gives you hope right now? Um, After everything we've seen through the process, what gives you pause to believe that meaningful transformation is partly possible, at least?
Mm-hmm. I think certainly here at TES, I think because uh, teachers and the school, for want of a better term, in that it's one of our values. I think because it's there as a central value and creativity, and because we're foregrounding it and looking at, well, it's not just a poster stuck on the wall. What does it mean?
Yeah,
And then how do we achieve it? And what I see is our teachers really thinking about that and
yeah,
really I think we have shifted the culture to one where teachers are willing to try things and to innovate in their classroom and to take risks. And you know, we continue to do that. We're going to start next year with a walking curriculum.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yes,
we're going to start our welcome. We're going to take teachers on a. We've devised a larger campus space, so using
yeah,
the local environment, the outside environment, and we've worked out where the kind of limits and parameters are. And of course that involves parents saying yes, it's okay to take my child to these limits of your local area.
yeah,
Um, and then we're going to start the year during our sort of teacher development days. We're going to go on a walk and use the tools in the walking curriculum in order
yeah,
to look at, well, this is in order to launch that
yeah,
we've just expanded our campus. So something else you can do is take students outside. You can take, so really looking at providing the opportunities and the know-how for teachers for that. And I think because I've got teachers who've signed up to give up their Friday lunch times and
yeah,
be part of this
yeah,
planning group. That
yeah,
gives me hope, you know.
absolutely it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, finally, Anne, what have you personally been learning through this process?
I mean, for me, certainly as a leader, I'm always learning how to manage any kind of change.
Yeah,
You know, I feel like I've done that my entire career, but every single time it's a different, when you move schools, particularly as well, it's a whole different community. And then each individual change that you want to make is a different change and has different impacts on different people. And so it always takes a lot of strategic thought and a lot of care and attention to what are the other perspectives that exist out there, and how can we manage those perspectives? How can we plan for that? How can we shift perspectives where we need to? Can
yeah,
we shift
yeah,
perspectives?
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, but certainly that process of change management is something that I think I'm always learning every single time.
Yeah,
I think it reinforced for me, I think, my beliefs around the power of the student voice for sure.
yes,
I, like you, I was in awe of our students and the things
yeah,
that they were able to
amazing.
say.
Yeah,
And so, you know, I believed it, but it certainly reinforced for me that the students need to be central to everything that we're doing in the school. So that's something that I take forward every day in school.
and thank you so much. It's so great to get back together with you again, and I hope this is the first of quite a few into the future, and who knows what other collaborations we'll come up with. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Peter.
congratulations on the work that you're doing. It really is inspiring.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
That's great. I think oh no, hang on. Did I stop recording? I pressed the wrong button.